When does a Libra get tired of someone? This is how they act after a breakup. There's something people say about Libra with an almost scientific certainty. They say this sign doesn't give up, that it endures, that it stands still in the face of a situation that anyone else would have left behind long ago. And it's not just what others say, it's what many Librans believe about themselves. I'm a Libra. I can't finish anything. As if it were an innate characteristic, like brown eyes or blood type. But there's something this whole narrative is hiding, and it's not something small. When a Libra finally acts on a breakup, when they finally leave, when they finally close a door that's been ajar for months, what people around them see is the delay, the hesitation, the back and forth, and they conclude, Libra is afraid of being alone. Libra clings too much. Libra can't let go. But Libra's delay was never due to fear. It was calculation. There is a stark difference between these two things. Fear paralyzes without reason. Calculation does not. Calculation is always doing something, even when it seems motionless. Imagine an old precision scale, the kind you find in pharmacies with two pans. You place a weight on one side and it begins to oscillate. To an outside observer, it seems to be in doubt, hesitating between two sides. But it is not hesitating. It is measuring, with a precision that the human eye, when poorly guided, cannot perceive. Libra is that balance. And what seems like indecision to everyone else is, in fact, a silent audit happening in real time. The problem is that audits take time. And while Libra is auditing, life goes on all around. The relationship continues, the conversations continue, breakfast together continues. And whoever is on the other side has no idea that inside, the scales are already being weighed with a seriousness that no one asked permission to begin. This explains a pattern that anyone who has been close to a Libra knows very well. The feeling that the decision came out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, Libra wants to talk. Out of nowhere, Libra is different. Out of nowhere, something has changed. But it wasn't out of nowhere. It was a process that happened silently in layers without announcement. And this process has a very specific beginning. There's a sign that most people don't recognize when they see it, because it doesn't look like what we imagine the end of a relationship should look like. There's no fighting, there's no ultimatum, there's no gate slamming shut. There's a retreat, small, almost imperceptible, like a radio frequency starting to have static. The music still plays, the voice still responds, but something in the quality of the presence has changed. The attention that once arrived whole begins to arrive in parts. The responses that once overflowed begin to fit into fewer words. Not because Libra is angry, but because Libra has begun to conserve energy in a relationship that, deep down, is already being weighed down in silence with a seriousness that the other person cannot grasp. Libra doesn't stop being kind at this moment. That's the point that confuses everything. They remain polite, present on the surface, responding when called. The kindness doesn't disappear, it changes in nature. Before, it was spontaneous. Now, it's careful, calibrated, like someone who already knows they're leaving but hasn't yet found the right moment to say it, who doesn't want to hurt more than necessary, who is, in some way, silently saying goodbye while still sharing the same space. And it is precisely there, at that moment when kindness begins to sound different, when presence begins to have boundaries, where before it was fluid, that something has already changed permanently. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose speaks precisely about this turning point. That moment when Libra realizes that the kindness it has offered to the world needs to be redirected inward. The book isn't about techniques, it's about understanding Libra's emotional architecture with a depth that no horoscope can achieve. It shows how the sign that most seeks balance often forgets to include itself in this equation. and how reclaiming this center isn't selfishness, but the only real path to relationships that don't drain, don't wear down, and don't end in silence. You are in that moment right now, still processing, still recognizing within yourself the patterns that have just been named. This recognition will not disappear after the video ends. It will continue working within you. And it is precisely when something begins to move internally that the right material found at the right time can change the course of something that seemed inevitable. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And while you're thinking about this, leave an answer in the comments. Have you ever noticed someone was pulling away before a word was even spoken? What was it like to recognize that later? But the most telling sign, the one few recognize when it appears, isn't a fight. It's not a sudden distancing. It's something much more subtle, which you can only name later when you look back with distance. It is the quality of Libra's presence that changes. Those who live with a Libra know what it's like to have that complete presence, that attention that makes you feel that even the most trivial conversation has weight, that your words reach you and are truly received, that there's someone on the other side who is genuinely there. This total presence is one of the rarest gifts Libra offers, and most people only realize how much they depended on it when it starts to become scarce. And it begins to gradually dwindle. So gradually that it seems paranoid to even name it. The conversation still happens, the laughter still appears, the coffee is still shared, but you look and realize, or perhaps just sense, without being able to articulate it, that something in the quality of the encounter has changed, that there's a layer of glass too thin to be seen, but thick enough to be felt. It's Libra preparing, not consciously, not strategically. It's Libra's psyche creating the necessary emotional distance before the body needs to create the physical distance. It's the internal protection system operating, not to hurt, but to survive what is about to happen. There's a specific point in Libra's process of becoming weary that changes everything. It's when Libra stops fighting, not dramatically, no scene, no speech. Simply at some point, Libra stops defending the relationship. The objections that used to arise, the arguments that used to be made, the efforts to reconnect that used to happen, all of that begins to dwindle. And the person on the other side usually interprets this silence as acceptance, as peace, as a sign that things have improved. But things didn't get better. Silence is not peace. It's the absence of a flame. When a candle begins to go out, it doesn't scream. It just stops flickering. Libra that has stopped fighting isn't Libra that has accepted. It's Libra that has come to the conclusion that there's nothing left to defend. And this conclusion didn't come suddenly. It came after many silent rounds of internal weighing, after many nights where the scales were rearranged, one by one, and the answer always came back the same. At this point, something curious happens to the other person. They begin to feel an absence they can't name. Libra's presence is still there, bodily, physically, in everyday conversations. But something essential is gone, something that was always available, always attentive, always willing to keep trying, that something is no longer accessible in the same way. It's like entering a room that has all the furniture in place, but has lost its natural light. Everything looks the same, but it isn't. And the more you look, the more you realize that what makes a room seem alive isn't the objects. It's the light that passes between them. When that light goes, the room still exists, but it's no longer inhabited in the way that matters. That moment, that silent transition from "I'm trying" to "I've tried enough" is the real turning point. Not the ending itself, not the final conversation, not the day things are said aloud. The real turning point is earlier. It's internal. And when it happens, even if no one outside knows, something has already changed in a way that can't be undone. And then comes the point that most disorients those on the other side of a breakup with a Libra: the emotional asymmetry. When Libra finally verbalizes that it's over, when the inevitable conversation happens, it's already too late in a very specific sense. Too late for the relationship, too late for Libra's grief, because Libra has already gone through it. The emotional breakup happened weeks before, sometimes months. While life went on the surface, inside Libra had already gone through the pain, had already remained silent with the loss, had already reached the other side of something that the other person didn't even know had begun. Imagine a letter that's been written, reread, kept and rewritten for weeks. When it's finally delivered, the writer has already healed from each word. They've already overcome their doubts. You already know every reason. But the recipient is still on the first paragraph. You're still feeling the shock of the fresh ink. You're still at the beginning of a process that the other person has already completed. That's exactly what happens when Libra ends. The other person begins to feel a pain that Libra no longer feels with the same intensity. Not because Libra didn't love, but because Libra loved early enough to have grieved in time. And this creates a distance that the other party almost never understands at the time. Why does Libra seem so serene at a moment that should be devastating? It's not indifference. It's not that Libra no longer cares. It's that the hardest emotional work has already been done. Silently, without an audience, without anyone knowing it was happening. Libra processed the loss of the relationship while the relationship still existed. And that is perhaps the loneliest aspect of this whole experience. Not the end itself, but the grief that happened without company, without recognition, without anyone being able to reach out because no one knew there was anything to mourn. And it is precisely in this asymmetry, in this ending that has already happened internally long before it is spoken, that many Librans realize they need structure. A path that helps them understand why they carry so much before letting go, and how to learn to balance this weight before it becomes exhaustion. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, talks about Libra's ability to feel deeply without getting lost, to end with integrity, to find the center that doesn't depend on anyone to exist. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. But there's something that needs to be said about the way Libra leaves, because it's that way that leaves the most lasting mark. Libra doesn't end things with anger. They don't use words they can't take back. They don't use the other person's pain as a tool to make their own exit easier. Libra ends things gently, carefully, with a consideration for the other person that sometimes seems almost incompatible with the act of ending things. And paradoxically, that's exactly what makes Libra's ending so difficult to process for those left behind. Imagine a surgeon operating with such precision that the patient wakes up without immediately feeling the incision. There is no visible blood. There is no cry of pain on the operating table. The operation was performed masterfully. But the pain comes later, and when it does, there is no visible wound to identify it. There was no cruelty, there was no aggression, there was emotional competence applied to the end of something that was real. When someone ends up yelling, at least you know what happened. You have something concrete to hold on to, something to process, something to react against. Anger, strangely, makes it easier. It gives shape to the loss. But when Libra ends gently, with serene firmness, with a clarity that leaves no room for negotiation, but also no room for resentment, what remains is a strange void. The other person is left wondering if it really happened, if there were signs they didn't see, if there was something they could have said. They keep going over conversations, looking for a breaking point they can name. And this search, this attempt to find someone to blame, a wrong moment, a word that went too far, is itself a response to Libra's gentleness, a way of retroactively creating the drama that the ending lacked. because it's easier to process an ending with sharp edges than one that dissolved smoothly, without anyone being allowed to scream. This deep-cut gentleness, this precision with which Libra guides the end of something, is one of the most complex expressions of this sign's nature. And understanding where it comes from, what it protects, and what it reveals about who you are as a Libra completely changes the relationship you have with yourself. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, explores this territory. The beauty and cost of Libra's sensitivity, and how to transform this emotional intelligence into clarity of purpose, not just another silent way of fading away. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. And then we arrive at the paradox that lies at the heart of it all. Libra is the quintessential sign of relationships. No one perceives the presence of another with more subtlety. No one adjusts, accommodates, or weaves themselves into another person's life with more naturalness. Connection for Libra is not optional. It's constitutive. It's part of how Libra exists in the world, how they process experiences, how they find meaning in things. When Libra is in a good relationship, they flourish in a way that other signs rarely achieve. Reciprocity for Libra is not a bonus. It's what makes everything else make sense. And yet, and this is where the paradox becomes almost unbearable to contemplate, when Libra decides to disconnect, it does so with a completeness that defies all expectations. There is no half measure. There is no "let's see how things go." There is no door left ajar as an invitation for a second try. When Libra goes, it goes for real. Imagine a guitar string that finally breaks. There's no dramatic sound at the moment of the break, just a vibration that fades into silence. No one heard the decision being made. But the instrument is no longer the same, and the music that could be played before can no longer be played in the same way. This deeply confuses those who know Libra, because it's difficult to reconcile the being who connects so deeply with the being who, when deciding to leave, leaves with such completeness. It seems contradictory. It seems almost unfair, but it isn't. It's consistent. It's the same heart operating in two opposing modes with the same intensity. The same heart that loves with total attention is the one that, when it finally decides to stop, truly stops. Because Libra doesn't know how to do things in fragments. It never has. Half presence for Libra is almost more costly than complete absence. And when complete absence finally arrives, it's not punishment. It's honesty. This completeness, this all-or-nothing quality that defines how Libra loves and how Libra lets go, is one of the most misunderstood aspects of this sign, and it is often the source of unnecessary suffering. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, delves into exactly this, how Libra can honor its relational intensity without it becoming a trap, how to channel this depth of connection as strength, not vulnerability. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. So what remains after a Libra leaves? What does this whole process, this silent audit, this careful retreat, this deep cutting kindness, this complete disconnection, what does it all reveal about who Libra really is? It reveals a sign that doesn't end things impulsively, that doesn't leave out of anger, that doesn't abandon because it got bored. Libra leaves when the scales have finally found their balance, when the weight of the relationship, what it asks for, what it gives back, what it demands in silence and what it offers in person, when that weight has been measured with all the precision that Libra possesses, and the conclusion has arrived with a clarity that can no longer be ignored. This isn't a lack of love. Sometimes it's the greatest act of love possible, acknowledging that two people no longer balance each other, that continuing doesn't serve either of them, That respect, in this case, takes the form of an honest exit, without resentment, without scenes, without the need to prove the other person was wrong. And the weariness that precedes this departure, that weariness that no one sees, that happens in layers, that doesn't have a set time to appear, that weariness is the scales at work. It's Libra being true to its deepest nature, seeking balance even when balance takes the form of an end. A symphony that ends in pianissimo doesn't end badly. It ends exactly where it needed to end. Every final note was necessary, every silence had weight. And when the last sound dissipated into the air, what remained wasn't emptiness. It was the resonance of something that was whole while it lasted. When a Libra gets tired of someone, truly in the depths where these decisions reside, what happens isn't abandonment. It's a conclusion. It's the scales finally finding their resting point, and there's enormous dignity in that, which deserves to be recognized both by those who stay and especially by those who, with all their gentleness, with all their wholeness, choose to leave.